She can't help it. She can't help but blast the referees, and she has every right to. We have watched Caitlin Clark get absolutely brutalized. Since she stepped foot into the WNBA, she's been targeted. She's the most flagrantly fouled player in the league. We had Ari McDonald shoot a free throw and had another free throw to shoot, and she didn't even care to shoot a free throw.
Let's be absolutely clear about what unfolded during Caitlin Clark's rookie season. She didn't just become one of the most fouled players in the league. She became the most flagrantly fouled player in the WNBA. These weren't subtle hand checks or incidental contact. These were hits, grabs, and collisions that by rule should have resulted in immediate and obvious flagrant calls. The evidence is overwhelming. Time after time, Clark absorbed contact that crossed the line from competitive defense into outright targeting. Ari McDonald literally abandoned her free throw attempt to sprint across the court and pick Clark up full court. Kennedy Carter's repeated physical confrontations went beyond basketball strategy. Even the All-Star Game, an event typically reserved for entertainment and celebration, saw Clark pressured 94 feet as if it were Game 7 of a championship series. That context matters. All-Star Games are supposed to be relaxed exhibitions, yet Clark couldn't escape aggressive defense even there. That alone speaks volumes about how she was being treated. This wasn't normal defensive attention. It wasn't respect. It was personal, and the numbers support that conclusion. Clark led the league in hard fouls that should have been classified as flagrants but were either downgraded to common fouls or ignored entirely. Inconsistency became the norm. Defenders were allowed to play her differently than everyone else, holding her off the ball, bumping her on cuts, extending pressure well beyond conventional defensive range. All tactics designed not just to stop her, but to wear her down physically and mentally. For most rookies, this kind of treatment would be career-altering. But Clark didn't retreat. She kept attacking. She kept shooting. She kept drawing attention to the problem simply by surviving it. And the more she endured, the more obvious it became that this wasn't coincidence. It was a systemic failure to protect one of the league's most valuable players. Instead of correcting course early, the league allowed the situation to escalate. And by the time Clark spoke out, the damage was already done. Her frustration wasn't sudden. It was accumulated, built over months of absorbing punishment while officials failed to draw a line. What makes this even more concerning is the message it sends. If a rookie with Clark's visibility can be treated this way, what does that say about player safety across the league? Her experience exposed a problem that had been quietly normalized for years.
Caitlin Clark. We watched Caitlin Clark get guarded 94 feet full court in an all-star game. All the nonsense, Kennedy Carter and all this stuff that was going on, targeted. If anybody deserves to take shots at the referees on all levels, it's Caitlin Clark. Kathy Engelbert, you did a terrible job of fixing the problem. You definitely did it.
Pay close attention to her body language. The tension in her posture, the edge in her voice, the frustration that slips through every sentence. This isn't a routine complaint about missed calls or bad refereeing. This is the breaking point of a player who has endured months of relentless physical punishment while the league largely stood by and watched. Caitlin Clark wasn't just frustrated. She was exhausted mentally and physically from being targeted night after night. What makes this moment so significant is that Clark crossed a line most rookies wouldn't even approach. She didn't vaguely criticize officiating. She didn't hide behind generic statements. She directly challenged the entire structure, calling out the referees, the league office, and even naming Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. That kind of public confrontation is unheard of for a first-year player, especially one still trying to establish her footing in a professional league. But Clark reached a point where silence was no longer an option. For months, she absorbed excessive contact, grabbing, holding, body checks, and hits that clearly exceeded standard defensive play. And yet the response from officials remained inconsistent at best, dismissive at worst. While the league promoted growth, star power, and expanded audiences, the very player driving that attention was being left unprotected on the court. This wasn't about one bad game or one missed call. This was about a pattern, a system that allowed increasingly aggressive behavior toward a rookie who was changing how the game was played. Clark understood the risk of speaking out. Rookies are expected to keep their heads down, play through contact, and earn respect over time. But she also understood something else. If she didn't say something, nothing would change. Her frustration wasn't rooted in entitlement. It was rooted in fairness. She wasn't asking for special treatment. She was asking for the rules to be enforced as written. The kind of contact she endured wasn't borderline. Much of it should have resulted in automatic flagrant calls. Instead, it was routinely ignored, downgraded, or waved off as physical basketball. By calling out the league publicly, Clark forced an uncomfortable conversation into the open. She exposed the contradiction between the WNBA's marketing of skill, freedom of movement, and player safety, and the reality she was experiencing on the court. That courage came at a cost, but it also marked a turning point. This wasn't just a rookie venting frustration. This was a star refusing to accept a broken system quietly. And whether the league was ready or not, Caitlin Clark made it clear. She wasn't going to be bullied into silence.
Stardom began when she became one of the most electrifying players in college basketball history at Iowa. She led Division I in scoring and assists, shattered records, and drew unprecedented attention to the women's game. Clark was later drafted number 1 by the Indiana Fever and has quickly become one of the most recognizable names in basketball. Her deep shooting range, creativity with the ball, and confidence from well beyond the arc have separated her.
The comparisons between Caitlin Clark and Steph Curry go far beyond shooting range. At their core, those comparisons are about how defenses fundamentally abandon traditional basketball principles to stop them. Steph Curry changed the NBA by extending the floor beyond imagination, and defenses responded by holding, grabbing, and interfering with him off the ball, often without consequence. Sound familiar? Clark brought that same revolution into the WNBA. Her shooting range forced defenses to pick her up near half court, sometimes even beyond it. Normal coverage simply didn't work. And just like Curry, the response wasn't adjustment, it was restriction. The difference is that Curry earned years of veteran respect before officials began offering him even partial protection. Clark had none of that. She entered the league as a rookie, instantly becoming its most watched player, and was treated accordingly, not with caution, but with hostility. Before the WNBA, Clark dominated college basketball. She led Division I in both scoring and assists. She shattered records that stood for decades. She brought unprecedented attention to the women's game, drawing millions of new viewers who had never watched before. When Indiana selected her first overall, she immediately became the most recognizable name in the sport. Her skill set demanded attention. Deep shooting, creative passing, fearless confidence from distances defenders weren't prepared to guard. She forced defensive schemes to stretch to uncomfortable extremes. Teams regarding her like she was a threat to the entire system because she was, and that threat triggered a response rooted in physicality rather than basketball logic. Defenders reached, they grabbed, they pressured relentlessly. The goal wasn't always to stop her efficiently. It was to disrupt her rhythm by any means necessary. This wasn't about respect. It was about fear. Fear of what her style represented. Fear of losing control over a game that was changing faster than some players and officials were willing to accept.
They shooting from the parking lot out there somewhere, okay? I grew up watching Steph play, said Caitlin Clark. She said after a game against the Golden State Valkyries last season, he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. What he's been able to do in his career, he's changed basketball. It's cool to be here. He's somebody I idolize. Like Curry, Clark's presence alone forces defenses to adjust well before she crosses half court. Those similarities resurfaced on Sunday after Curry made headlines for the way the
Listen closely when Caitlin Clark talks about Steph Curry. There's no bitterness in her voice, only admiration. She grew up watching him redefine basketball. She studied how he moved, how he shot, how he handled pressure. She modeled her game after his willingness to challenge conventions. Now she's living his reality. When NBC Sports Bay Area posted a clip of Curry addressing the Charlotte Hornets for grabbing and holding him, Clark didn't stay silent. She jumped into the comments with a simple, honest message. We want to see Steph make 12 threes a game. Stop grabbing him, please. That one sentence revealed everything. Because Clark understands that frustration intimately. She lived it all season. From opening night onward, she faced defensive pressure that went far beyond normal competition. Constant ball denial. Extended coverage designed to limit touches. Repeated physical contact that crossed clear boundaries. And unlike Curry, she received no benefit of the doubt from officials. Curry may still face uncalled fouls, but his reputation affords him occasional protection. Clark had none. She was treated like a problem to be solved, not a talent to be protected. Her admiration for Curry isn't just about style, it's about shared experience. Both players forced the game to react to them. Both faced resistance for changing the geometry of the floor. The difference lies in how that resistance was handled. Clark endured it without institutional support. And eventually she refused to stay quiet about it.
On TikTok, sparking reactions across the basketball world, including from Clark. On Monday, Clark weighed in directly in the comments with a blunt plea to defenders. She said, "We want to see Steph making 12 threes a game. Stop grabbing him, please." This was her tweet, or not her tweet. This was her in the comments. I believe this is on TikTok. Okay, or one of the two, something. It says the comment makes sense coming from Clark, who knows that feeling.
What makes this situation deeply troubling is the strategy behind it. When the Charlotte Hornets faced Steph Curry, they accepted losing as long as they could limit him. They grabbed, held, and face-guarded him from 94 feet, even if it meant surrendering wide-open shots to everyone else. They lost by 20 points, but they didn't care. That mentality mirrors exactly what Caitlin Clark faced all season. Teams were willing to abandon winning basketball just to make sure she didn't get comfortable. Defensive schemes prioritized disruption over success. In Clark's case, it went even further. Some defenders appeared more focused on sending a message than executing strategy. The Ari McDonald incident perfectly captures this mindset. McDonald had a free throw to shoot, her assigned responsibility. Instead, she walked away from the line entirely to sprint down court and pick up Clark full court. That decision had nothing to do with basketball fundamentals. It was personal. That kind of behavior doesn't emerge in a vacuum. It reflects a league environment where excessive physicality toward a single player was tolerated, encouraged even, and when officials failed to intervene consistently, it became normalized. Clark wasn't just guarded aggressively. She was hunted. Teams accepted inefficiency, foul trouble, and defensive breakdowns as long as Clark didn't explode offensively. That speaks to how threatening she had become and how poorly the system responded. This wasn't competition. It was containment. And eventually Clark had enough.